Welcome back to Blatantly Honest. This is your host, Michaela Nichols. We have such an exciting season for you. This episode will kick off the start of season 2. On today's episode, we have the incredible and talented Johnathan Lee. Welcome back to Blatantly Honest. This is your host, Michaela Nichols. We have such an exciting season for you. This episode will kick off the start of season 2. On today's episode, we have the incredible and talented Johnathan Lee Iverson, who was the youngest and first African American to become Ringmaster of Ringling Bros and Barnum Bailey. He's also the last Ringmaster for the show, which had been around for 146 years prior to its closing. Barbara Walters even named him one of the most 10 fascinating people, and he also has a question on Jeopardy, for any Jeopardy fans out there. Side note, I totally butchered his name by calling him a ringleader, but his response was just so funny that I couldn't take it out. Welcome to our version of the greatest show on earth. So without further ado, here is the last Ringmaster. Well, good morning, Johnathan. Thank you so much for being on the Blatantly Honest show. You have quite a tremendous record of being the first African-American ringleader of the Barnum and Bailey Circus and also the last ringleader. So I can't wait to hear your story. It seems absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing me onto your wonderful show. And I thank you, despite the circumstances we have.
Yes.
I only have one correction. Ringleaders go to jail. So I was the ringmaster.
Ringmaster, Ringmaster. My apologies. That's a cooler title than ringleader. So Ringmaster.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I will fix that in the thingy. But awesome. Well, so first question: have you seen The Greatest Showman, the movie?
I did see it. I enjoyed it. I knew it was going to be a hit when I saw it. Because of the music. The music is wonderful. And of course, handsome Hugh Jackman. He's very charming. And who doesn't love Hugh Jackman, right?
Yeah.
He's very cool. I mean, it's like Tom Hanks can sing and dance. I mean, he's that guy. Everybody loves him. And it was a fun movie.
Yeah.
It was just very entertaining. It did what it was supposed to do. It's very entertaining. It has a beautiful message. And I love it because it completely defied the suits in Hollywood. Apparently, nobody thought it was going to do anything. They didn't throw any advertisement towards it, and as they tend to do, they just completely missed it. You know, people want pure entertainment. People want to be lifted. They want to be taken away, and they want to be reached. And that movie really had that effect. And when I heard the music, I was like, "This is a hit."
I listen to the music all the time.
Yeah, I was like, "This is going to be a hit." And sure enough, word of mouth, and it became a major surprise at the box office.
But I'm sure it wasn't like that when, you were ringmaster and all that kind of stuff. I'm excited
Are
to
you
hear
kidding?
everything.
Oh, we were dancing all the
Oh,
time,
I bet
breaking
your
out in
experience was
song.
better. And but what made you want to become a ringmaster?
Nothing really. It was just opportunity. I was
Okay.
actually trained to be an opera singer, and I just graduated from the Hart School of Music. I was really, and literally that year I had graduated college, and I was at a wonderful vocal camp and everything, and I met all of these, super talented young people,
Of
and
course.
so I was on that path, and my plan was to really go to Europe and to further my studies, and so I was just looking for means to raise money to do that, and history just happened to whisper to me in a very big way and sprinkle some sawdust in my direction, and I had to take it. I mean, I just was thinking to myself, there's no way I can miss this kind of opportunity because it's like one of these things I know nobody else. I don't think will ever meet anybody else who'll be able to say, I was ringmaster. Plus, I was very young at the time. So my main concern was, man, this is going to be a great pickup line. I
Yeah.
could really, really meet a lot of girls going because, when you're 20 something, your whole life revolves around that. And
Yeah.
so it was so funny. But, again, it really was a testament to how not in charge of your existence you are. You can plan all you want. You can really you can prepare, you can do everything you want, but God will in fact direct your steps,
Mhm.
and you're going to go in this interesting. You'll have these detours. It's one of the talks I give. I had the privilege of giving at Harvard College, where I
Wow.
spoke about the adventure may be in the detour. You may. I get it. You're in Harvard. You're in Stanford. You've done all the things you're
A
supposed to
genius.
do. Yeah, and your life is set. Well, no. I mean, God is God, and
Mhm.
it's like you wake up and you realize, my goodness, you have all of these ideas, and not to say it's not okay to plan. You should plan. You should keep yourself active. You should go in the way your blood beats, as the great American writer James Baldwin used to say, because I do believe God gives you these indicators as to
Mhm.
where you're to go and how you're uh, uh, to move yourself. But I think it's just leading to his way of doing things. and
Yeah,
and
and we think it's our way, but it's not.
yeah, it's not, it's so amazing, because what I realized, all of my vocal training, all of my years of performing, I was in a really popular boy choir that was excessively busy when I was younger. All those years, it was amazing, because when you get in these interesting detours, it's like it's like, oh my goodness, it all makes sense. It's like this puzzle comes together, and you realize, and I giggle all the time. I tell people, I know God has a wily sense of humor. You plan all this stuff, and sure enough, nope, this is how we're going to do it. I mean, it's the same thing that happened with my marriage. I met my wife while I was ringmaster, Ringling Brothers. She is not my type. I had my type all, and I'm sure I wasn't her type at all. You have your type, and this is what I was going to do. This is what, not at all. We're going on almost 20 years, and
Oh,
she's
wow,
not my
that's
type, and
amazing.
God sits somewhere giggling. So as we look at where we are now with this pandemic, I
Mhm.
always encourage people, listen, as the old song says, put your hand in the hand of the man who steered the waters. I mean, you
Mhm.
just, at some point, the best you can do is really, I see this as a time to reset, to replenish your mind. I think a lot of us, especially Christians, and I even say it of myself, it's almost shocking how biblically illiterate so many of us are.
Yep.
We don't renew our minds enough. When you really look at um, the ancestors of our faith, these are really remarkable people who had, many of them came from meager backgrounds. Many of them were, I mean, just challenged with tremendous persecution. I mean, we get up here and we complain in America about Starbucks not saying Merry Christmas. You talk
Yeah.
about people being torn bit to bit by lions, and they were singing hymns till their
Mhm.
death. I mean, that,
It's
they
very
had to
different.
be in a, yeah, that, I think is in perspective.
Yeah.
They threw a meme on Facebook. Yeah, okay. You know what?
Get over it.
Yeah, that's not even a light
No.
affliction to Paul. You know what I mean? And but as they say, the church is booming in places like Asia and Africa, and those there are similar persecutions happening. But what you're hearing from a lot of the people who minister out there too is like it's the same kind of sentiment. These folks have such a thirst, they have such a zeal. It's in South America as well, Brazil, where my wife is from. Same thing. They have this zeal. They have this that would really shame a lot of us over here, And
Oh,
so
I'm sure.
it's something I've been thinking about, and I said, wow, I think even in myself, I have to really, I think it's time to really fall back in love with my first love again, the real one.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I love the quote. I think it's God or humans plan, God laughs, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny because it's true. Everything you're saying, and with everything going on, as horrible as it is,
Mhm.
there's a hopefully end goal in picture and something of that nature. So tell me about this opportunity. That did it just kind of come about one day, and you're like, oh my God, I need to take this. How did this
I
ringmaster
was in an
opportunity?
audition. So here's what's funny. I was doing my plan. I determined that I was going to just go out, audition for a bunch of shows, try to land something, get some money, and then fly to Europe and study. I mean, the teacher I'd met, we had this mapped out. He was getting things ready. And so I was in an audition for dinner theater. The dinner theater is called the Fireside, and it's a fireside dinner theater out in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. One of my favorite cities. I couldn't appreciate it when I was younger, but I can tell you, it is so quaint. It's like Mayberry come to life, and they
Wow.
have this beautiful family owned dinner theater, and it's the hot thing in the town. And when you're one of those New York performers that come around there, I mean, they treat you so wonderfully. I mean, the people are great. The church ladies with big hair, like I used to have a few minivans ride up on me, and I'm from New York, so I'm just paranoid anyway. And
Hmm.
I'm like, and this sweet lady, she's like, "Oh, honey, do you need anything? Do you need a ride to the grocery? Oh, we'll see you in church on Sunday." Like, you have to go to church, right? So it was great. I enjoyed being there. So I did the audition for that particular theater, and unbeknownst to me, the director was also a director for Ringling Brothers, and at that moment, he was actually looking for the ringmaster for their new edition, which was supposed to be their 129th show, 129th edition. And I didn't know anything. I did the audition; it was impressive, and then I received this call later on that day. It was just the weirdest thing, some I forgot who it was someone from Feld Entertainment, was parent company of Ringling Brothers. They called me, and they asked if I would be interested. And I stood there because it felt like the CIA was calling me or something. It was so weird. So I said sure. I mean, I said I'd
Why
try
not?
it. Yeah, I was up against about 30 other candidates. The audition process was rather strenuous at that time. I had to go through three different auditions, had a tape so they could send it to the producer. Believe it or not, Circus is meticulous and very organized, and they're very, hands on about how they put their shows together. And that's practically any circus, even, a mud show. It's like they're very
Wow.
particular. And so I did the audition, and, about a month or so later, it was mine. And,
Wow.
that's how it happened. And I had to take it. It was so funny because I was like, oh, I have to take this. This is too juicy. I was like, well, I'm young. I was 20 something years. I was about 22 when I got it. So I ended up becoming the youngest ringmaster in their history. But the way I was still doing my plan. I said, well, I'm a little off course, but this is great because now I have a gig that lasts a significantly longer time. I can save up a lot of money and then go to Europe. I was going to do it a year, maybe two. Have some stories, have it on a resume. 2 years turned into 18. So
Yeah, so you thought.
yeah, you fall in love with it. And it was like some mystical movie. I this elder statesman ringmaster from another show uh, had reached out to me, and he was so kind. And a lot of people in the community of circus in different shows, so it's like the Sawdust Mafia. And so he told me, I'll never forget. He gave me his card, and he wrote on it. He said, "Listen, just to let you know, when the sawdust gets in your veins, you'll never be the same." And we have a saying in circus about the
Oh,
sawdust is in your veins, and you really aren't. And I talk to people who've had this lifestyle, and it's the same thing. Nothing you do afterwards can, I don't care if you become the president of the United States, it's not going to be, it will not be the same exhilarating, fulfilling uh, uh, experience. Circus will always be that top experience. It just always will be. And I think it really had everything to do with the fact that, in my opinion, it just, in many respects, it has, I think circus in a way has the answer to human beings actually getting along.
mhm.
This is not to say we were perfect and we didn't have our share of nonsense with people, but there's something to be said about everyone focused on a specific goal. And in that goal, everyone is knows that they have dignity in what it is they do. So you may not be the ringmaster, you may be the guy who sweeps the dung, but that the ringmaster never looks down upon that person because we understand how intertwined we all are. Everything is connected, and you like in circus it's so vividly clear. And when you are around people whose craft might cost them their lives, and you're a part of, you, especially if you're part of the crew, it's amazing. The working person in the circus is revered. I knew performers who wouldn't perform unless a certain working person handled their rigging. That's how
Wow.
sacred that relationship is. So you didn't have the swarmy hierarchy thing going. You didn't have this caste system. Everybody was intertwined. People would often say, "Oh, the ringmaster system." No, he's not the star. First of all, no two-legged mammal in an animal circus is a star. That's, you just got to get that out your mind. When your co-workers are 5-ton elephants and 600-pound tigers and lions, you are second billing, and you accept that and you understand that. And also, you just realize, it takes a village for everything to work. No matter how talented you are, no matter, it takes a village for everything to work. And when you have that clear understanding, it doesn't matter what you may think of me personally. We got to make this thing work. and
Oh my goodness.
so it's one of those wonderful things. I always make the joke that, listen, when you're 40 feet in the air on a trapeze rig, you really do not care about the immigration status of the person who's at the bottom, who's supposed to catch it. You don't
Yeah,
care
yeah.
about their
Hey.
color. You don't care about what they're into, just catch me. And so that's really, I think, the heart of it, and what makes it work, and what made the Greatest Show on Earth work, and why that experience is so special in that way.
That is absolutely incredible. Just hearing you say that just, I grew up going to the circus, going to the Ringling, and, with my family. And I used to be so scared of like the cannon and the noises, and then I loved it. And it was just like, it was a magical experience
Mm.
every single time. And I walked away smiling and happy and thrilling. And I bet that just made you feel incredible to be able to do that for everyone.
Oh yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. I mean, it's circus life is a rigorous, very hard life, but it's hard with, like, you're doing something with that's so worth it. I mean, the legendary Colonel John Harriet, who to me is the greatest ringmaster ever. I mean, he's like, you ever look this man up? I mean, just one of the great revered names in American circus. He was just wonderful, and he had a saying where his daughters told me, he'd be in the knee deep in mud, breaking down a tent, and they didn't know how they were going to get to the next town. And they look over at him, he'd look at them, and he'd go, "What? And leave show business?" And so that's really, that's one of the things I think resonates with so many of us. And it's all worth it, all worth it. All of the travel, all, the exhaustion, dealing with people. We'd have our conflicts, our personal, internal, whatever's, but they pale in comparison to that
Yeah.
smile. They pale in comparison to the connection we would make with our audience. And I think that was always one of the highlights for me, is that we literally built relationships with different people from town to town. And the show meant so much to so many people in different ways. I mean, I would meet families all the time, who had real emotional connections to the show. I met this beautiful family in Jacksonville, Florida. I'll never forget it. They were having like too good of a time. Everything that happened, they were just, and I'm going, okay, this is a bit much, but I love it. So I go over to them, and mom, lovely lady, she had like this one of those frizzy, colorful wigs on, and she had clown makeup, and one son was dressed like a clown, and the other son was dressed like a ringmaster. And I maneuvered over there. They happened to be in the front row, so it was perfect. And I went over there, and they just enveloped me in this big old hug. And she looks at me. She says, "You have no idea how much this place means to us. She said, so my son over here, the ringmaster, she said, he's autistic. He didn't speak he spoke his first words here at Ringling Brothers when he was 4 years old. She said his first words when he was 4 years old were at Ringling Brothers. And here I am in the middle of the show about to break down and cry. I'm like, I got
Yeah,
to
I know.
continue. I'm like, I'm like, no. I was
No.
just stunned by that. And the reality was, I mean, I don't know how you tell someone's autistic, but whatever those different various symptoms are, he seemed like he just was very quote unquote normal. Like he was having a ball, and he was communicating with me. He was communicating well. I mean, it was just, it was wonderful to see, but to know that was the reason why they had to go. I mean, I even met this elderly couple. They were so sweet. I mean, they turned into like 6-year-olds when they showed up. And
Wow.
the wife especially, she was so funny, very energetic couple. And the husband was like most husbands, just sitting there happy he did something for his wife, and he's calm, and she's just bursting and bubbling at everything. And she looks at me, she says, every, he brings me here for my birthday every year. Every year he brings me here for my birthday. And I thought, wow, that's so like awesome. And she's just kissing him all over and just having a blast. And to me, I mean, that's like, that's it. That's what made it so worth it. And you can't get experiences like that anywhere else.
No. Wow. Those stories are just great. And I'm sure those are things you need to write a book if you haven't about all these experiences from the people.
Yeah, no,
And
I know. You and my wife, I tell you, my wife gives me this side eye every time
oh,
people,
she's gonna give
you
you
need
the
to,
side eye when she
yeah.
hears this.
Write the book. I'm like, I know.
All right,
Yeah,
you
no,
have to.
I definitely have to focus in on that. And, it's such a massive experience, right? That I don't like, I don't know if we write a book or we try to write a script for a Netflix series or something, but I need
I
to
would
do
watch it,
something with it. Yeah, I need to do something with it. It would be
but
wonderful.
so a question: when you were ringmaster and this beautiful show is taking place, were you ever nervous watching your colleagues and your family just do these stunts? Were you ever in situations where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm scared"?
Oh yeah, every day, all the time. You never get used to it. It's so. It's amazing. The only time I was calm in an act when it was animal acts. I never was nervous
Really?
during animal acts. Animal act because the animals are far more predictable. You just have to feed them and pamper them. That's predictable. Every now and then I mean, because they're individuals too. So every now and then, you would have an animal who just didn't want to cooperate. And nothing would happen, but the trainer would identify it, and their staff would identify it. And what are you going to do? You can't make a 4-ton elephant do what it doesn't want to do. And so I would watch those acts closely because sometimes the animal would just be a bit moody, and you're not going to make a lion do what it doesn't want to do. I've seen some traders, they'll, come up with their best, but if that animal is like, you know, and this
Can't
was
fix
like
it.
it's highly rare. In fact, I only saw that in my 18-year career. I may have seen that happen twice, maybe, because again, animal trainers are some remarkable people, the good ones. They don't have days off. They're with those animals basically 24/7. So really, before something like that would occur, they would actually know. I remember when we had the marvelous Alexander Lacey, who was from the UK, and he comes from a family of lion trainers and animal trainers, and he had a wonderful mixed act of tigers and lions, and he's just so brilliant. I mean, the guy, he looks like James Bond going into the cage. I mean, it's so incredible, and he should be selling shampoo. His hair is so great, but he he,
The Fabio
he
guy.
right, and so he told me, he said what he does, he would get up, he'd start his day around 6 a.m. and he would check on each and every one of his cats. He had over 20 or so like that would travel with him. I think 14 would perform. But he told me, he said, not, he said, some shows, not every one of them are out there. Sometimes let others sit back because I can tell throughout the day if they're just not there psychologically. So he would always check them physically. He would check them mentally. He would just see how they were. And that's how he would determine that. Sometimes he had a full cage, other times he didn't. I remember I was in the middle of a show with the wonderful Mark Oliver Gable, who was the son of the great Gunther Gable Williams. And Mark was a wonderful trainer himself and a fantastic presenter. And I'll never forget, and this taught me, circus is a living thing. So you always have to pay attention, especially as ringmaster, because I saw him literally cut the act short. I didn't know what happened, but he said, "Look," he was talking about one of the elements. She just didn't want to do it. Because I kept hearing him repeat some kind of command or whatever, and she just, I guess she just was like, "Look, I'm not
Mm-mm.
today," and it was like, "Oh, okay." You just go, "Okay." I mean, but most of the time, yeah, the animals are fine. It's the danger acts would always drive me nuts. We're
Ugh.
talking about the Globe of Steel. When I started, it was the Globe of Death. My first Globe family was the Urias family. They were a wonderful family. They have 3 motorcycles that would just do these incredible patterns at top speed.
Ugh.
And then they would put a woman in the middle of all of that. Oh, it was crazy. And when I first started, I met the, pardon me, I met the patriarch of their act. His name was Victor, the late great Victor Urias, who at the time when I started, he was about 63 years old, and he would still go in there with his sons, and they would be zigging and zagging it up, and they were just amazing. And it would, I mean, I would, I just like my stomach turned every time I saw it, and
Oh,
it just never got old. I mean, when
the
I
danger's
would work
always there.
yeah, when I worked with the Torres family, who were just as crazy, they had up to, I think they got up to about 6 bikes into their, yeah. And so, it was them and it was their 2 sisters. And, it, it was just like, I would have to introduce this act every time. And I'm just, I'm pleading and praying in my mind while I'm introducing this act. And listen, they rarely ever failed to disappoint. Every now and then you'd have a crash, rarely an injury, but things happen. I was very fortunate. I've only experienced maybe one major mishap that was nearly devastating, but for the most part, I mean, the acts, again, these are some incredible people. Their
Mhm.
work ethic, how they prepare, it's really something for life, honestly. I think so many people can learn from them in how you really approach your work. I mean, and I guess, they do have a perfectionist mentality, the
You
conditioning,
have
whatever
to.
acted. Yeah, you just have to because, I mean, you're thinking, my life.
Mhm.
You have to be precise, and not only precise, you have to be entertaining doing it too,
Yeah, you can't be
So,
sweating the whole time and
right. So,
oh my
I'm just
god.
on a wire. I mean, circus, there are original comic book heroes, in my opinion. If you think about it, especially
Yeah.
back in the, as my daughter was saying, the olden days, Dad. Yeah, the olden days, which she's talking about like 5 years ago.
Oh
But
my goodness.
like when I think about it, yeah, I would think, probably back in the 1800s, or even in the early 19th century, or well, early in 20th century, maybe, where we didn't have the things that we have now. I mean, it wasn't that much competitions where people would actually travel from different towns to go see a circus. That's how amazing and exhilarating it was to see these people defy
Mhm.
gravity, defy logic, do things beyond the human imagination. And it would only boast my enthusiasm as
Well,
ringmaster. I mean,
you feed
I
off that
had the
energy.
Oh yeah, listen, I had the easy job. I was just paid to dress well and be a glorified fan. I mean, I wasn't getting out there endangering myself. So I always I always compared it to being like a boxing promoter who ran his mouth and who didn't have to fight, but I could talk trash because I knew
Hype it
what
up.
they were. Yeah, I was the ultimate hype man. I was Flavor Flav. I knew they were gonna Yeah, I just to know what you're presenting is going to really deliver is really a wonderful feeling. And to be a part of that, I mean, the greatest compliment I got about what I did was from my colleagues, and they would say, "Man, I I I've had more than one person say to me, I always felt I had to do really, really good because the way you introduced me, I just felt like, oh my
Couldn't let
goodness,
you
like I
down.
can't. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I have to now. I would, one person told me they were tired and like just hearing me introduce them, like it was like having a little shot of B12 or something. And they were able to really,
Wow.
really give the act the energy and the dignity it deserved.
That's incredible. What an amazing compliment to just be, reassured. And I'm sure it was just exhilarating, like you've mentioned, every single time you went out there. Different
Absolutely.
experience, different crowd. Wow. Did you have a favorite act in the show, or you can't pick?
No, I did have a favorite act. My favorite act was the Globe of Steel. It was just, hands down my favorite. But it just went without because it just was so. It was the one that always got me. But it was hard not to appreciate every other kind of act. I mean, it's just hard. I love the Cossack riding troupe. These were wonderful equestrians from Kazakhstan and yeah, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and some Russians sprinkled in there and Georgians sprinkled in there. And these were like, I mean, you talk about tough. I mean, they're going top speed on these horses. They're doing these wonderful acrobatic stunts and I mean, amazing. And just making it, I mean, the men and women both were just just amazing. They came out again, it was like they came right out of comic books or something and just hardworking, very just had a wonderful connection with their animals, and you could see it. I would watch it backstage, and I would see people, they'd be singing to the animal, they would be talking to them, playing with them, all sorts of things to have that connection. It was like they couldn't get hurt. I would see them literally fly off horses, and I'm going, okay, that's their career, and they'd be back the next show, and I'm like, that's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Trapeze. I had a love hate relationship with
Oh, my
trapeze.
hands sweat thinking about trapeze because I'm,
Yeah, when it's good, it's oh my goodness, it's like amazing. When it's good, it's like watching. It's like you have to believe in God after that. It's
yeah.
so good.
Yep.
I was really fortunate because I had my first um year on the show. Pardon me. I shared a dressing room with a marvelous single trapeze artist, the late great Mark David. And this was the first time in my life. It is so funny. I ever looked at a man and I was, I felt like probably what Elvis groupies felt.
Oh,
And I'm going, what's happening to me? I'm a flaming
what is this?
heterosexual. And I'm like, I'm looking at this guy fly. And I think I was tearing up. I just couldn't believe it. He was so immaculate. And it was just insane. He had no kind of safety, nothing. It was just him over the crowd. And I mean, I was just stunned. I was stunned by his professionalism because we shared a dressing room together. He was funny. We would like, I mean, the stuff we talk about, I can't talk about here, but we had such a good time. And he would share with me some of the things, he went through to learn his craft and, just the rigors of it. And the one thing I learned from him was just consistency. He was at the arena at the same time every day. He had a very strict diet. I mean, he was svelte. I mean, he looked like a Ken doll.
Oh
And,
my goodness.
he prayed a lot. It was really, and he prayed a lot, and he's just such a cool, classy guy. And when and he was so strong, I didn't realize how strong you have to be just to climb up the web. I'm thinking, oh, I do some
I can do it.
push-ups. Yeah, right. those acrobats will put you to shame. These little people look like twigs. No, their cores are like a brick. And, he would just climb up the thing seamlessly, get up there, get on his trapeze, and he'd do this. The finale of his act he would catch himself by his heels. Again, no safety, nothing. Every show, I mean, we're talking about almost 500 shows a year, and he would do it, nail it every time, every time. And it was just incredible, man. I mean, I think that, I was just taken away just watching how wonderful he worked. And that really showed me how special the circus arts was. I did have this beautiful encounter my first year with the great Gunther Gable Williams, who was like, I mean, you look up Gunther Gable Williams, he was the modern circus's Michael Jordan. He was our Muhammad Ali, our Frank Sinatra. And he was universally respected. Because like any profession, everybody has to talk, because everybody,
Yep.
everybody had. But when it came to Gunther, I think he was one of the sacred. No, nobody, because first and foremost, he was extraordinary. And he was extraordinary in a field of extraordinary animal trainers. Like, he wasn't the only one, but he was the biggest star. And a lot of the things he did were just like stunning and
What?
mind blowing. Yeah, I wouldn't even give it justice to talk about it. But when I joined the show, he had been long retired, but he was a workhorse, right? So he was always working there in some capacity, training animals, looking after. He headed the animal department. And he didn't need to work. I mean, this is again
He
circus
wanted
that
to.
saw. Yeah, the sawdust is in your veins. And so that was his life. And his family would discuss that with me. They said, like, everything revolved around that. He had 5 meals a day when he was at the height of his powers. He had 5 meals a day. They knew, like, those animals. And every animal trainer's family says the same thing. The animals come first. And I had this opportunity. I'll never forget it. I was just wandering backstage. It was hours before a show. And I could hear some activity occurring on the arena floor. And so it was Gunther, and he was with some horses, and he was there training them. And it was so, I just stayed out the way. I was just looking from way out off in the distance. And
Far, far away.
yeah, and I'm looking, and I have no inclination to warn animals, right? But I think everybody understands when you witness genius, like, you're witnessing genius, like, or you
Wow.
it's like people who got into opera because of Pavarotti, or people who got into
Mm-hmm.
basketball because of Michael Jordan. It's that kind of thing where their genius is so magnetic, it transcends their arena. And that's how Gunther was. I stood there, just my mouth he would I literally he could talk to them, and I could see it, the way he communicated. They were so attentive with him. It was stunning. Like, I would see him, even animals that weren't his necessarily, because they were other animal trainers
Mm-hmm.
bring their animals, and maybe they were having some difficulty or something, then Gunther would step in, and an animal would just snap to. And I'm like, this
Dr.
is so
Doolittle.
cool.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
basically, it was Dr. Doolittle with a beautiful blonde mane and who could do backflips. And he was just amazing. And I mean, and such a gentleman, he's such a gentleman. He loved being an American. He immigrated from Europe. Um, and he just loved everything about being an American. And if you wanted to, if you could think of your favorite celebrity, like that person you would love to meet,
Mm-hmm.
and if you met them, you would hope, oh my goodness, I hope they're what I think they are. That was Gunther. He literally he went above and beyond what you thought he was. He would drop everything to give you an autograph, to give you a picture. Gentleman, just very sweet, very cool guy, very charismatic, very strong. I mean, just always working. I'll never forget. I was like in the middle. We did a show, and then we had like 3 shows. It was Saturday, and so in between, I think I went out to get lunch or something, and I see him like shaving a branch or something. He's very, and I said, boss, what's
Right.
up? And we used to call him boss. And he said, well, I need sawdust. And I said, like, this guy can literally tell the company, listen, send me some sawdust. So he's out here shaving, I was like, nothing's beneath him. And he's like the
Wow.
biggest star that really, I mean, he's like the biggest star in modern circus. And it didn't matter. He was like, he's going to get whatever he needs done. So that was a really great, a humbling experience for me,
I'm
especially
sure.
early in my career. I said, okay,
Yeah.
so
Before it
that's
gets
how
to
it
your
should.
head, and
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. It's like, okay, remember, the guy is out here shaving
Yeah.
tree
Oh,
branches
it's,
for sawdust.
you're like,
So,
bring it
yeah,
in, reel it in, reel it in.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. So, how did you feel after 146 years, the show, I think that's the correct number,
yes.
being told that it was no more? How did they tell you?
We all sensed it to a degree. At least I did. It, in particular, when the elephants were taken off the show, it was just like, okay, so this is done. Because it's funny how people hear things despite the fact that we're in an information age. We said we're just only taking the elephants off, and people heard they have no animals. And so the tickets reflected that. I mean,
Mm.
ticket sales plummeted tremendously, and rightfully so, because as I said earlier, the stars of an animal circus are the animals. The
Mhm.
traditional circus, people come for that. That's what they come for. They will always come for that because, quite frankly, most of us will never see exotic animals ever
Yeah.
unless we may go to a zoo, and we're not going to see them in that capacity,
Mm.
in the capacity of them being active and healthy and displaying their own wit and their own humor and their personality. And I think that's the great one of the great gifts, one of the many great gifts of circus when it comes to animals and animal husbandry, is that we actually um, really are the only ones to actually present animals in their fullness. They're not just these.
In a cage and
Yeah, they're just not these things languishing around looking for food. They have feelings. They have purpose. As
Mhm.
one wonderful animal trainer said, when she was contending with people who contend against her
Mhm.
wonderful show, she was like, well, you obviously don't love them. If you love them, why wouldn't you want them to have jobs? Why wouldn't you want them to have purpose? Every living thing has purpose. And I thought that was such a wonderful answer, and it's true. I mean,
It
animals
is.
are very simple. I mean, it's not complicated. You don't have to do anything manipulative and
Mm.
cruel to make them. Fear has never worked. It never worked. It doesn't work on animals. It
Never
doesn't work
works.
on, yeah, it doesn't work on people. Eventually things rise up. That's why you do occasionally see those terrible videos, of some,
Mhm.
because it's just not what it's supposed to be. Listen, it's practice, it's patience, it's praise, and it's repetition. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, having known some of the very best animal trainers on the planet, having watched some of their sessions, I don't have any inclination toward animals. I'm not that guy. I'm not oh, look at the puppy. I step over the thing. I don't care. And
Yeah.
I know God did not gift me with that. I would be the guy on the news because I don't have that patience. I don't, it's like,
You own it. You know what? That's all that
well,
matters.
yeah, I know myself, and I think that again, that's one of the charming things about circus is everybody's in their place.
Yep.
I know what I was. You want me to talk to the media, you want me to, write something, cover. That's me. I mean, I might walk the animal from here to here, but that's it. I'm not doing anything else. But when it came to the end of the show, knowing how m- much the elephants meant to the legacy of it, you could see it happening, and the ticket sales were just they had fallen off I would say in the last 20 years. It
Oh.
was just this, it was declining some. When I first came on the show, we had this incredible boom. I mean, we were breaking records. Um, they really promoted it well. It was a huge show, and we had other shows like that afterwards. But then, I guess with just so many different factors that honestly I'm not really privy to. I mean, I'm making assumptions, new technology, some competition. People would say Cirque du Soleil was, but we never saw each other in that capacity.
Yeah.
Honestly, Cirque du Soleil was another wonderful expression of circus, and we always appreciated their artists, and they did in kind. And from my understanding, they didn't. Um, it wasn't that they were against having animals. When they first started, it was a matter of affordability. But it just so happened that the way
Mm-hmm.
they presented their wonderful productions worked for them. And circus has all sorts of different ways of expressing itself. We just had the more traditional way. But I just think, it just really became a matter of business. It wasn't selling as much. And then you take the elephants away. And all I kept hearing when I would run into people was, oh, you all don't have animals anymore. No, we have a lot of animals, but we just don't have the elephants.
We don't have the
So there
elephants.
was, yeah, so there was that. And then,
Wow.
they attempted to create this really new sci-fi like show, which to my shock, honestly, was really good. Because I was thinking, ice and
Uh,
but that's the beautiful curiosity of working with a Ringling show. And the fun of it was building something out of nothing. And so we created that show and it was going off well. But again, ticket sales, we just couldn't keep up in that respect. And so I sensed something was coming. And I knew that for the producers of it, the owners of it, it was just a very hard decision. Nobody wants to be known as the family that killed a great American treasure, you know? Who wants
uh,
to be known for that? And
no.
it was one of these changes that unfortunately had to occur. And you know, uh, when the news hit, as much as I understood what was going to happen, it still it still kind of hit hard. It didn't hurt me personally. I knew what I would miss, and I still miss a lot. I miss that life so much. I was ready for somebody to knock on my door one day, many, many years from now, and come in and see me in my laid out in my ringmaster suit with my top hat and my cold dead hand. I mean, that's how much I was like, listen, man, I want this life forever. I really did. I fell in love with it. I mean, there was nothing like it. And I had everything. I was the richest man in show business because, I mean, listen, I got to do what I love to do. Um, I got to share it with so many incredible people. I got to work with the most amazing people. And my family was with me every day. I was raising my kids
Um,
on the show, and they ended up working for the show. I mean, everybody in my family was
that's
getting a check.
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, like what else? And I used to sit back and go, like, what else could I want? Like, really, if Steven Spielberg called me, sure, I'd take the call. But like, honestly, there's nothing in show business so enriching, so advantageous than that. I mean, we had it all. It was there, and I miss that. I miss the people. I miss the train rides. We lived on a mile long circus train. I miss. Oh my goodness! I'm telling you right now. About this time, we would be at this time we would be getting ready for our two shows of the day, and then we would break down, and then that evening we're on a train, and Monday morning, choo choo, it's out, and it's the best sleep you'll get. I mean, like, oh, I mean, we would just veg out. I mean, you can see America going by. I mean, I left my kids to themselves in the other room. I said, look, just don't kill each other. You can watch whatever movies you want to. You know where the food's at. Hang out,
Oh,
chill. Mommy and me are going to be knocked out cold. And it was
don't come
great.
find us.
Yeah. Oh, it was.
Wow.
I just loved it. I mean, it was just the most beautiful way to travel. And I'll tell anybody if you want to really see um, really get a good view of any landmass. Take a train, take a train. It's the greatest way to see it, and we got that every day for many years, and so that's what I miss. But what hurt me really was the fact that so many fans would not enjoy it anymore. To me, it's a great rites of passage. The message of the circus, to me, what I got from it was we really can make this thing called humanity work. We really can. If we could teach people that we have a common goal, we have a common uh, point of reference that we all benefit from. If we can really get people to understand that your destiny is in fact intertwined into mine, that was really the great message of the man that's called the greatest American who ever lived, Dr. Martin Luther King. I think we forget he was first and foremost a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that, in many respects, and he was very radical, more radical than we believe, because, he was the most hated man in America at the point of his death. We love to sanitize him now, but,
Hmm.
they didn't
At
shoot
the
him
time. Oh,
because
yeah.
we loved him so much. The message he gave, it was that message of how we are inevitably intertwined with each other. I always suggest to people that every American family, you need to show your children the wonderful series Eyes on the Prize, which covers the civil rights movement, because it will give you a good indication of what I'm speaking of, and it really will open people's eyes. And you could see how many Americans actually got exactly what I was saying. You didn't just have just a bunch of black people struggling on their own. You had some really courageous young white people who were saying the same thing. Said, "Look, I know my destiny, my rights are tied in with this person's right." White folks who were
Hmm.
getting beat and killed alongside black folks who got it worse because how dare you, you in lover and all that stuff. They had it. So it's one of those things. And so in many respects, I know. Look, I'm not comparing us to that, but
Hmm.
I really believe the circus's message of active unity, not that therapy, but where if people can see their place in that circle, circus comes from the Latin root for circle. So circus, if you can see your place in it, if you have dignity in it, in your work, and you're made to feel that way. No, people aren't looking to be gazillionaires. People just want to know they have dignity. They just want basic dignity. Whether you're the president of the United States or whether you're, a trucker,
Shoveling,
whatever.
yep.
Yeah, or whether you're in circus and you're the ringmaster or you're shoveling this, you just want to know what you do and contribute has dignity. That you're not that the ringmaster isn't exalted because they had to step on your neck to get there. And
Hmm.
it's nothing like that. Like literally in the circus, and that's what I think. That's the thing that really I hold to, that message of knowing that, my goodness, man, to know no matter how high up you were, your entire existence was tied to everybody.
Wow.
Everybody played a role. Yeah, the show can go on, but the reality was everybody played a role and everybody mattered, and everybody's role mattered to the next person that was there. And we don't have to get along. We don't have to like each other, but
But it gotta work together.
let's get this show on the road, and
Wow.
so that's what I miss. I because really in my latter years I really started thinking of what we did as a ministry. I always felt we were peddlers of joy, and I think that's what got me through a lot. And it really was a transition for me as a professional. When I first started, when you're young, and this is true for every entertainer, I don't care what they say later, but we're all arrogant. We're
Hmm.
all about ourselves, and we're about ourselves in an innocent way generally. Like we're looking to get ourselves out there. It's understandable. But if you can last a bit long in this kind of industry, which is a rough and tough industry, you have to have an ego, first of all. You have to have an ego to survive it, because
Yeah.
most of your life is rejection and a bunch of people telling you what you can't do and that you're just having pipe dreams.
Amen.
But yeah, if you can make it, and if you can sustain yourself, you'll come to find out the real joy in that gift you have, whether it be song, whether it be acting, whether it be hosting your podcast, whatever it is really about you giving to your audience, that connection. It's always about that connection. If you can do that, you are successful. You're doing exactly what God made you to do. You're the world is round, and so you're passing it along. And I mean, again, that really was it. My biggest joy wasn't always in the bright lights of a 10,000 seat arena. Most of the time, it was in a children's hospital. It was in a school or boys and girls club, talking to that one kid who I could see on their face. I'd hear it from kids all the time. I want to do this. I really want to do this. I feel this way. How? And to be able to share with them my journey, and for them to see, wow, there's somebody who can, I can get there. I remember a friend of mine who used to work for our show. She came she became a teacher in an Ohio community, so she brought her students with her, and she called us. We met up after the show, and she said, I wanted to bring my kids specifically to see you all, and specifically you, because she said during the show, one of them is just, she's stunned. She's like, first when you came out, she goes, "Oh my God, he's black."
Oh
And she,
my god.
yeah, she said, "Oh my God, he's black. He's black like me." She said, "Yeah." And so she's gone. They're going. We're going on with the show, and I guess she got wind of my biography, and she goes, "He's from Harlem. Oh my!" And,
Oh my
and the
god.
teacher's like, she's like, "Oh my God!" And she said this. It was so wild. She said, and the girl goes, "So I can get out."
Wow.
And I said, wow. And I heard things like that over again. I would meet couples who would have to, I remember I met this wonderful family. They were a white couple. But they had a black daughter. And, and the father came up to me. It's like, I was just so glad she saw you. She just kept going, "He's brown like me. He's brown
Oh.
like me." And for me, just doing the show day in and day out, you kind of take things like that for granted. But then
Mhm.
you remember, like, all of it just matters. And then I would think of, like, how many different types of people we have in a circus. I mean,
All
every
of them.
day yeah, right, I'd hear like 20 some odd languages going off all the time, and I'm going, this is beautiful. Like,
Mhm.
all of these American children are getting to see beyond their square box. And it almost kind of makes you wonder how anybody could hold certain beliefs after you've cheered these people doing amazing things for you.
Are
And
like, but wait, you.
right, exactly, right. And so it really just, you really learn about that common thread with humanity. I have friends now, forever, who are from all over the world, from Mongolia, from Brazil, from Morocco, from China, you name it.
I'm
And
sure.
yeah, and thanks to technology, we're always in touch and things like that. But I mean, you find your commonality when I guess your hands are in the sawdust together, and you're building something that is really worthwhile to one and all. So I think that would be my message to people, even now, especially. It's so easy, especially in the middle of a pandemic or whatever, to do the finger pointing, to look
Mhm.
for scapegoats, to uh, really practice the lower recesses of our nature. It's easy to do that. It's much harder, but it's much more rewarding to really pull yourselves together and realize, we truly are in the same boat. And I think that's, one of the, if there's a silver lining in this thing, that's one of them too. It's like when
Very
9/11,
good.
yeah, it's like when 9/11 happened. Anytime there's something that threatens your mortality, suddenly, suddenly you're not that white girl no more. You're just my sister.
Yeah. Yep.
you know,
Yep.
like, I mean, suddenly all those stereotypes go out. You just want to live, and suddenly
You
all of
want
that
people to
stuff.
live. I want
Yeah,
everyone to live.
yeah. I just want everybody to live. We could deal with all that stuff later.
Yeah.
Suddenly it doesn't matter, and I think. Yeah, I do believe, God just has to allow us to get our behinds kicked a little bit to realize a lot of these things that we're destroying land over, destroying lives over, even making hideous policies to destroy other people's lives over, really have no real eternal meaning. They don't mean anything. What matters is our camaraderie, is our love for one another. That really is it. I mean, it's a simple law. It's just the
We just gotta
simplest
learn it,
thing.
dang it.
Yeah, just love your neighbor. I mean, just love your neighbor. I don't have to like them, but just love your neighbor, and stop with this nonsense of othering people merely because you just don't know. And it's fine if you don't know, learn.
Honestly.
Yeah,
Oh,
ask some questions. I
figure it
assure you.
out.
Yeah, it's amazing how similar people are. And I had that gift in the circus. It's amazing how similar we are. I can tell you the Mongolian father has the same concerns for their kid as a father from Chicago.
Yep.
I mean, it's the same. Believe me, I assure you, Brazilian women are talking about the same things. Uh, some Moroccan women are talking about. It's fascinating, but we're just separated via geography and language, and that's really the only difference. But really, people have to really come together. They have to come together and have to really realize, a lot of this stuff is trivial, and it reduces the beauty of this thing we call life.
That it does. That it does. Yeah, this is a trying time, and I really appreciate you being on. I could listen to you talk for hours, just because I'm sure you have stories. You need to write that book, because or show, whatever, I would watch it. But it is just amazing to hear your stories and what you've done for people all over the world. And I am so honored to have had you on the show. So thank you for your time.
Oh,
And
this is a privilege. I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
yes. So, as a just rule of thumb I have for all my guests, I'm going to let you
Okay.
take us out of the show. So, however you want to. But the catch is you have to say the little tagline, which is
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, keep the circus alive inside you, but more importantly, be bold, be you, be blatantly honest. I'm your ringmaster, Johnathan Lee Iverson.